In today's world, it's worth our time to pursue the morals and virtues American superheroes exemplify. These ideas are a combination of Enlightenment thought and Greek philosophy, and they're the two parts that make American superheroes. Superpowers are largely inspired by the rights and liberties proposed by Enlightenment thinkers, whereas Greek philosophy influenced a hero's sense of responsibility. Just like ancient myths and religions, superheroes preach the values of our present culture. If this is true, then the way superhero stories are written are an indicator of society's confidence in those values. But right now, faith in these virtues are at an all-time low. Publishers are changing old characters in order to tiptoe around these ideas for modern readers. This does not mean we should avoid the Enlightenment and Greek virtues present in our old comics. Rather, the sudden absence is a reminder why they are important in the first place. Out of all the thinkers that influenced the American superhero, Greek philosopher Aristotle is responsible for a hero's sense of morality. He suggested that to discover what makes a good person moral, we must find out what our natural function is. What Aristotle meant is that a thing is good so long as it achieves what it was designed to do. For example, a good shovel digs, a good pair of scissors cuts, and a good animal eats and reproduces. Humans are also animals, but more importantly, we're animals that are rational and seek virtue. In this sense, a good person, according to Aristotle, rationalizes how to be moral using the power disposed to them. For superheroes, this means they use their superpowers for good deeds. The source of these powers stem from Enlightenment thinkers known as the Philosophes. They emerged during the 17th and 18th centuries in response to France's old regime. During this time, France and most of Europe adhered to a rigid social hierarchy ordained by the supposedly divinely placed monarchs. A person's place in society was largely determined at birth rather than talent, merit, or hard work. Over 97% of the population were part of the Third Estate, the lowest class during the ancient regime, where less than 40% of people owned any property. Even if a peasant managed to save up to improve their lives, the state would absorb all surplus production through taxes, eliminating all possibility of class mobility. This disregard for liberty would inspire the thought leaders that would tear down the ancient regime. Among these leaders were John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. John Locke posited that people should be treated as individuals that have the inalienable right to life, liberty, and property. Rousseau further elaborated on Locke's ideas, suggesting that by using these powers, society and government could maintain civil liberty and equality. He was right. The United States would for verbatim take the words and ideals developed by the Philosophes and declare independence in 1776. It's not surprising that the values that inspired America's founding fathers would trickle down and influence the heroes written by American comic book authors. The power of these thoughts and ideas would spawn several more revolts in Europe, including the French Revolution. However, the power of liberty alone would only lead to anarchy. These rights could be abused, just like supervillains in the comics abused their power. During the Industrial Revolution, factory owners used child labor in order to expand their new right to property and capital. There had to be a guiding force to steer people towards using their rights in the same way superheroes use their power. This guiding force would be Aristotle. When Greek philosophy and Enlightenment ideals are combined, suddenly these rights become responsibilities. The power of free speech becomes something to live up to rather than to use. And it's this dynamic between power and responsibility that inspired America and its superheroes. Their powers are metaphors for the rights we take for granted. Spider-Man, Captain America, and Superman are all interesting characters because of this dynamic. Spider-Man failed to live up to his powers, causing the death of his dear Uncle Ben, thrusting him into facing villains who also failed to live up to their powers. Green Goblin's despicableness is a reflection of who Peter Parker could have become had he not learned responsibility. Dr. Octopus is everything Peter Parker wanted to be, wealthy, eight-legged, and a scientific genius in his field. However, unlike Spider-Man, Dr. Octopus was never willing to be selfless and put others' needs before his own, sending him into a life of villainy. Captain America fulfilled his responsibility by fighting off the Nazis during World War II. But when he was resurrected during the 21st century, he returned to a world where the government no longer represented the values his country stood for. To uphold his ideals, Captain America had to give up being a soldier and become a superhero. What makes Superman Superman isn't the origin of his powers, but the values bestowed upon him by the Kents. Traditionally, Superman's origin has never mattered. In Superman's first issue, his origin only took up a page. The Fleischer cartoon only took 25 seconds, and in Grant Morrison's rendition of the character, he famously only used 4 panels. The Man of Steel exemplifies the virtue of self-determinism. Superman could have come from anywhere, and he would still be a hero because of the values the Kents taught him. Just as we have to grapple with living up to our rights and liberties, American superheroes have to live up to their powers. Unfortunately, as of late, publishers no longer seem interested in these themes. Recently, DC Comics have changed Superman's motto from Truth, Justice, and the American Way to Truth, Justice, and a Better Tomorrow. By changing Superman's motto, DC avoids confronting America's uncomfortable past, but by doing so, they forgo the responsibility to set an example for what America should be. This isn't the only sign that the industry has lost faith in Superman as a character type. Publishers and writers have been developing evil, twisted versions of the character, including The Dark Knight Returns Superman, Injustice Superman, Superboy Prime, Red Sun Superman, and even Zack Snyder's Superman. Some readers might argue that these changes aren't indicative of society's confidence in American values. Rather, they're symbolic of DC trying to appeal to a global audience. America isn't the only country in the world, after all, and evil versions of characters are just a popular trend. These explanations might be factors in why these things happened. However, I find it hard to believe that Superman has only recently become a cynical character. According to Stefan Buchenberger, after discussing numerous evil versions of Superman in his essay, he said, quote, "Superman can neither be God nor devil without ceasing to be himself. Underlying the character are core American values, such as individual freedom and equal rights for all human beings. Writers use Superman as a metaphor for both America and America's values. Do we really believe that the sudden increase of evil supermen is not related to the self-reflection Americans faced during the same time period? No, of course not. There's lots of reasons why people and writers are no longer confident in the values that inspired America. Don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed these cynical interpretations of the Man of Steel, and I have nothing against the authors who wrote these amazing stories. It's important to remember that these writers and artists are people, and people are products of their time. Right now, America is in a period of self-reflection. The value of these virtues and ideas are being questioned because it took us so long to even remotely live up to those ideals. It's not surprising that the Enlightenment and Greek themes present in our old comics are lost during this transition. Despite this uncertainty, I'm confident that by the end of this period of self-reflection, that these ideals will endure. There's a reason why George Ludlum, the writer for the 1940s Superman radio show, chose to have the all-American superhero fight off the KKK. It's because the values Superman stands for are the antithesis of hate and bigotry. When our country fails to fulfill these values, it's not a referendum on the values themselves. It's a sign that we need to stand up and do better. Which is why heroes need to embody these moral standards, to demonstrate that it is fundamentally un-American to be hateful and bigoted, and that it's our responsibility to live up to the powers and rights we have. These ideas bring too much hope for the future to be thrown away.